Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 38 of Chess Basics, things every chess player ought to know. Today we're continuing to look at tactics using the games of Paul Morphy as a source for examples. In this game, Paul was playing a game at Rook odds against Unknown, some amateur player. He was still very young at this time, about 12 or 13 years old. And he just moved his queen to d5. Queen takes d5 check. Now, first of all, notice the supply of pieces on the board. Paul has one rook, one bishop, and a queen, and his opponent has two rooks, two bishops, and a queen. But compare the activity. So, first of all, Paul played this game at rook odds, which means he started without his queen's rook. There was no rook there at the beginning of the game. And he even sacrificed his bishop here. So he's down both a bishop and a rook. Now, black in this position could potentially hold on. He could play a move like bishop d6, and the engine rates this as maybe slightly better for black. So it may be possible for black to hold on and win this game, but it's very difficult because of the activity of all white's pieces, which is kind of amazing when you consider the balance of forces. But his opponent was an amateur, probably not the best player in the world, and he played king c7. And so the first move to follow up, you might want to stop and think about this one for a while. There's a number of different choices you have here, and but the question is, what's the best and most active way to finish or continue the attack? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. It is bishop to f4 check, and this is what Paul played. And now the king can't really run away. I guess he could go to b6, but he loses his queen, and he didn't want to do that. So king here, just queen takes queen, is pretty convincing. So he tried blocking, and oddly enough, the chess engine thinks queen to d6 is the best way to block, and of course that gives up the queen for a bishop, and black has some hopes, but white is winning. But what black played is bishop takes d6, another logical way to block the check. Notice, I don't know if I made this clear, there was no square for the king to run to other than b6. All these squares are covered by the bishop and the queen, so that king to b6 is the only king move. So other than that, he's got to block the piece. This is his only other choice. So bishop to d6, other than giving up the queen, was played. And now this is the real quiz for this particular game. There's a mate in 3 here with white, so see if you can find the mate in 3. I'll be quiet for a little bit, or you can pause the video and take a look at it. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away piece by piece. It starts with the move queen c5 check. And now there's no way to block the checks. So there's 2 squares the king can go to, here and here. And if he goes to this square, which he didn't, hopefully you can see the mate in 1. Just take that bishop. The rook is guarding the escape squares over here, and the queen is guarding the escape squares over here. So the king is mated. So pretty straightforward, but how about if the king runs to the other square? Do you see the mate here? Well, there's 2 ways to mate. You could play bishop takes, queen takes, it doesn't matter, queen there or there, queen takes is checkmate. But that's not what Paul played. Paul played it the other way. Of course, remember, he's a kid. He gives up his queen. Just, I think, the fun of it, sacrificing his queen so that he can checkmate with only a single piece. And the king has nowhere to run to. So a very cute mate. If we back up to the beginning of the position I started with, what's really interesting about this is how Paul, even though he has fewer pieces than his opponent, he's using all of them. So the rook, the queen, and the bishop all had a role in this checkmate. The rook was cutting off the escape of the king in one of those checkmates, and the queen and the bishop delivered the final checkmate. So that's just an important rule when you're attacking. Be sure and try and get all your pieces in on the fun. That's the way to do it. Okay, have another game to show you. This was a game, once again, it was played with rook odds. You can see there's no rook there. There's Paul playing against his dad. And let's stop just short of the end. This was not a particularly well-played game, but let's go back a little bit. I just wanted to show you the game because it's kind of fun. Queen takes e6. This was kind of the last moment. You can see Paul is still down a rook, right? He's got rook, bishop, and queen, and black has two rooks, bishop, and a queen. His dad has two rooks, bishop, and a queen. But the best black can hope for in this position is a draw. The chess engine recommends king d3 as a way of holding the draw. But of course, that's a crazy move to find and play in a wild position like this. I mean, the king, you naturally want to get your pieces out. So queen d4 here was a very understandable move from his dad. And Paul played queen g4 check. King runs to d3. He played queen e2 check. The king runs to c2. This is why I like this game. The king gets chased all the way. He plays d3 check, and his dad played king takes bishop on c1. And now here's the final move of the game. Can you find it? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. It is castles. Castles and checkmate. So that's your famous castle-mate combination. So if you haven't ever seen that one before, that's a real classic. Okay, so I have another example here that is a little deeper. So I just thought those were fun ones to look at. When Paul was 12, so this is in 1850, I guess before his birthday, there was a visiting chess master, Johann Lowenthal. Johann Lowenthal, probably it's how it's pronounced. He was a Hungarian chess master, and he visited New Orleans. And Morphy's dad asked him to play some games with his kid, who was already established himself as an expert in the local circles. So reading from Wikipedia here, it says, Lowenthal, who had often played and defeated talented youngsters, considered the informal match a waste of time, but accepted the offer as a courtesy to the well-to-do judge. Morphy's dad actually was a Supreme Court justice. By about the 12th move of the first game, Lowenthal realized he was up against someone formidable. Each time Morphy made a good move, Lowenthal's eyebrows shot up in a manner described by Ernest Morphy as comique. Lowenthal played 3 games with Paul Morphy during his New Orleans stay, scoring 2 losses and 1 draw. So he wasn't even able to defeat Morphy once in 3 games. This is from one of the games they played, and I'm just going to show you one position from this game. Starting here, Paul Morphy is white, Lowenthal is black. The position is about even. So Lowenthal is not a patzer who's going to be rolled over easily. What's interesting about this position is there's a tactic that Paul plays here. And this tactic, while not entirely, maybe it's not the best position in the best move in the position, but it is a playable move. And I think it's a good example of calculation skills. How can you find these combinations? How can you calculate them out and decide if they're worth playing or not? So why don't you take some time to study this position, maybe pause the video and think about it. If you were white, you're looking for an interesting tactic here. Okay, pause the video if you want to think about it some more. I'm going to give the answer away now. What Paul played here was knight takes d5. So that's the tactic. And you might think what's a little bit tricky about this one is there's 2 ways. This pawn is protected in 2 different ways. So there are 2 ways that the knight can be taken. And so when you calculate this, you have to calculate what happens in either case. So having given you this clues, why don't you think about what happens if you take with a pawn? So knight takes pawn, pawn takes knight. What does white have in that case? Okay, I'm going to show you that. It's knight takes pawn, pawn takes knight. The move you need to see here is queen to b4 check. It's a fork, winning the bishop. And if black tries to defend the bishop with the knight, you can just take that. And when he takes back, you take the bishop, or if he moves the bishop, then you retreat the knight. Either way, you get your piece back and you've won a pawn. Okay, so that's one side. It's kind of a tree with two branches. That's one branch of the tree. The other branch is knight takes, bishop takes. And what is the tactic you have there to justify that knight sacrifice? Okay, pause the video if you want to think about it. I'm going to show that one now too. It is knight takes, bishop takes, and the tactic you have is the discovered attack on the queen. So you can play knight to g6 check, and no matter what black does, you can take the knight or the rook on the next move. Now, the chess engine evaluates this position as slightly better for black, but still within the range of even. So this is a tactic that just kind of disorganizes the position a little bit, makes it a little more complicated and unbalanced. And Morphy went on to win this game. The best defense here maybe is just moving the king d7. So what? I guess I'll go ahead and show what he played. He played queen e6, just so I can go ahead and put this on the board, and then he can just take the knight in the corner. And that was not even the best defense, and actually white is slightly better. So if we back up with the best defense of king d7 or bishop e6, it's slightly better for black, but white is still in the game too. There's still a game to be played there. So in this position, what can we say about it? The knight is going to be rounded up, so you can imagine that piece just disappeared. If you look at the material balance, queens, two rooks and a bishop versus rook, bishop, and bishop and knight. So basically, it's a rook against two pieces, the bishop and the knight, and Paul has won a pawn. So from a strictly material point of view, that rook and pawn is not worth quite as much as two pieces. But there's a whole game to be played here. And Lowenthal went for the endgame, took the queens off immediately, and there's a slight edge for white. Black has to take some time to round up this knight, and white gets an opportunity to get his pieces out. And the game went on, and eventually Paul won in the endgame with and trading off everything and just having a rook against a bishop and a knight. He was able to use his rook to round up the pawns and win the game. So let's just go back to this. But I think the most interesting point here is just how can you discover these tactics. And if we erase these two lines, you might look at this position and notice that if the queen was on b4, it would be forking the king and the bishop. So that's a tactic you might notice. And you say, oh, well, I just have to get this pawn out of the way. And then the other thing you might notice about this position is that you've got a queen and a knight in line against the king, and you'd have a discovered attack. All you need to do is get rid of this bishop. And so then knight takes d5 here is something that will accomplish either one or the other. It'll either get rid of this pawn or it'll get rid of this bishop if he takes. And if he doesn't take, then you've just won a pawn. So that's one way you can discover these tactics. Okay, I had one final position I wanted to show you guys. Let's see. This was from a game between Paul and an unknown amateur, and it was very badly played. It was not played at night odds. Let's back up. Yeah, it was played at even odds, but it must have been kind of an informal game. Both sides were making kind of sloppy moves, but Paul has a winning blow here, and this is a really cute tactic. So it's white's turn to move, and why don't you study this position until you spot the tactic. Okay, yeah, pause the video if you haven't got it. I'm going to give you the answer. It is bishop to g5. And a great move, right? Skewering the queen and the king. And you think, yeah, that's great, but why can't the queen just take that bishop? What's so great about it? Okay, so that's the second part of this one tactic here. What happens if the queen takes the bishop? Okay, pause the video if you want to think about it some more. The answer is queen takes bishop, knight to f7 check, forking the king and the queen. So a very cool tactic. The idea is bishop to f7 with a pin of the queen against the king, just winning the queen. And the reason the bishop is actually defended on that square is it's defended by this fork from the knight. So very, very pretty pattern. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm going to be back next time with some more tactics from Paul Morphy's games. See you then. Bye.